Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat, and today I'm doing my first July wrap-up because I have been reading so many great things in the month of July that I realized I'm gonna have too many and the full wrap-up is gonna be way too long. So I'm gonna do a split month wrap-up, which hasn't happened in ages. Also because I haven't been filming in the first half of the year, but I'm just happy to be reading a lot of really good things. So without further ado, we're gonna get into it. It's split into DNFs and then my ones that I read all the way through. And just keep in mind, all the DNFs aren't in really any order because I didn't read them far enough to have super strong opinions on them. And then all the ones I did finish are from least favorite, one I truly loathed, to some really amazing books. So let's get started. So first I want to talk about the DNFs. We Carry the Sea in Our Hands by Janie Kim. I thought this sounded great because it's about a Korean-American young woman's coming of age experience mixed with marine biology. However, we were on a road trip, ideal conditions, and the narrator was not good and the writing was way too flowery for my taste, and I realized this is not working. So that's a DNF. I also have the Digital Aesthete, musings on the intersection of art and AI. Again, I thought I would love this because I love human AI stuff. I'm sure you know if you've been on my channel at all. However, this was not good in my opinion. So I listened to the first 4 things, which is 1 essay and 3 stories. And the average of those was 2.5 stars. So I just thought, I really think I'm gonna give it a low rating if I read it all the way to the end. Another DNF I have is 10 Things I Wish You Knew About Your Child's Mental Health by Dr. Billy Garvy, who is an Australian child clinical psychologist. And I really didn't like this because I think in the first chapter, he is referencing the cry it out method for children. And he's comparing it to, he says, a study that was done where children were left in a crib alone without any interaction, and they were given what they need, which is like shelter and food, and they all had mental illnesses. And first off, it wasn't a study. They needed to keep kids alive, so they were kept in not ideal conditions at all. The cherry picking and the way that he said it, that is not even true at all. And someone who didn't know what happened in history and that thing he was talking about would be like, oh, I see. The cry it out method is like going to exactly lead to mental health disorders in my children. And I was like, oh my God, that is awful writing. That's so awful. And very, very misleading. So I DNF'd it. I did not continue on because that's a level of, like, I don't know, journalistic integrity that clearly he's trying to push a message despite that not being the case of the actual situation at all. Anyway. The other one, another DNF, is White Eye by Blanche Alpuget. I've never heard of this author before, but I did pick it up for the Giallo readathon, and I thought this was going to be my ticket because it has an animal on the cover, it has yellow, it has the color in the title, and I just thought that this was exactly what Giallo is all about because it's kind of like, it says it's a murder mystery set in New South Wales, Australia, which is where I just was with my family and where I picked this up. And the woman who's murdered is known for her sexual promiscuity. And there's weird stuff happening at a research institute. It says a book that delves into wildlife protection and the seamier side of human sexual behavior. So I was like, ooh, sounds great. No. So I did read quite a while in there. I think I read 100 pages and I just could not get over the rampant slut shaming and misogyny and male gaze in here. I am really still curious about what was happening in the institute, but I can't wade through it. So yeah, this is a DNF, unfortunately, and this was not my ticket to the Giallo readathon. And the last DNF I have is Don't Hate Me by Emory. This is a dark sapphic romance that I was trying to read in my hunt for really good sapphic romances to recommend to you all. And this is about a federal agent and an assassin who is said to kill her. and basically uses himself as a honey trap in a BDSM club to like forge a bond with the target. And I'm really interested, and it is dark because the assassin has some creepy trophies. They collect the eyes of their victims and put them on a shelf, which is but the writing style was not my cup of tea, because the character that's supposed to be like aloof and cold and very like emotionless killer vibe, it would be like she was so flustered at the sight of the other woman, and I'm like, which one is it? Is she easily flustered and she doesn't know what she's doing and she's bumbling over her feet in front of the other woman, or am I supposed to see her as like this cool, cold, aloof one? So I thought the author just didn't maintain like character continuity, so they were both like getting a bit muddled, and the writing wasn't good enough for me to like look past that and keep going. So I was like only a quarter of the way and I was dreading reading it, and I was like, we don't need to live our life like that. We can just DNF it. All right, speaking of let's not live our life like that, let's get into the ones that I did read. So I have one terrible one good one, and 4 great ones. So let's talk about Amelia by A.W. Rene. This book really pissed me off because I finished it the day I did my worst books of the year video. If I hadn't filmed it before reading that, this would have been the worst book. This book makes me so angry. It's set in a crumbling house in suburbia, and there's a woman and she's reminiscing on things that have gone wrong in her life, and they are letters written to her daughter. And the thing that I hate about this is that there is like every trigger imaginable, and a lot of things that I think make me wonder why this was published and why this needed to be written. Basically like the abuse and sexual abuse and the torture and killing of a small child, and the slut shaming of that child by their mother. Like, I hated this book. I hated this book. This will be in my worst books of the year, I am sure, because it came up all of a sudden. Like, it was 2/3 of the way, it was just a normal horror book. And that's why I filmed my worst books of the year, because I was like, there's no way it will go so bad in the last third. And it went so bad. I like ranted about this to my husband like the whole day. Like, yeah. So do not read this at all costs. Do not read this book. Next we have the good one, The Flowered Blade by Taylor Hubbard. So it really caught my attention because it said it's like a bratty captive prince dupe is what like was written in the description of someone's review for it. And it's not really captive prince. It has a captive and captor element. But like a lot of the other vibes of captive prince aren't there. So they did get me with the description. But I really had a good time regardless. So this is set in a fantasy world, and we are following like a bratty trans man prince who is the heir to the throne, but he does not care about war and like taking over other kingdoms. He just wants to learn about flowers and be a healer, like a medic, and read books. What a vibe. And he is sent by his father to deal with the tax issue at a nearby estate when he is waylaid by a band of orcs who are led by the chief of like the nearby orc kingdom. And he's taken hostage so that his father will meet the demands of the orc kingdom, which is basically they want emancipation from taxation and no representation basically in the elven kingdom. And I just thought the representation was awesome, and I thought that the world building was awesome. The thing that I didn't super love was some of the dialogue and some of the sex talk I thought was cringy, which is really hard. It's really hard because I feel like either it's so personal preference, right? So some of the stuff they were saying, I was like, la 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 la. I don't want to know. I don't want to read that. But that's just my preference. So you might think completely differently. And another thing I really loved is like, Silver, who's the elf, he has undergone like chest surgery, and he has scars on his on his ribs under his chest, and it's described as looking like flower petals, and I thought it was so gorgeous. And that's actually one of the things that drew me in from the cover. I just think the cover is so stunning, and yeah, definitely read this if that sounds interesting to you. I gave that 3.75 stars. And the last 4 books I want to talk about are all 4.25 stars. I cannot believe it. I've had an amazing time. So first up is So Witches We Became by Jill Baguchinsky. This is a YA horror feminist retelling of The Mist by Stephen King. 4 friends are going on vacation for a week to an island like off the coast of Florida, and one of their older brothers is with them to chaperone when things start to go awry, and like this black goopy stuff starts to encroach on the island. And also trapped on the island is like the local handyman woman who is the owner's daughter, and also 2 boys from their high school, one of them who's the boyfriend of one of the girls, and then his best friend. And as things come to light, you realize that the island has been a safe harbor for women for a long time, but it also exacts revenge and expects sacrifice from those who call upon it. So before the boys came to the island was sleeping and was gonna let them have their week. But as the boys come, the island is angry and filled with rage. And this was so good. Some of the really creepy elements in here were really good. Really, really, really good. And I think this is comparable if you liked, what's it called? Wilder Girls, Saw Kill Girls, the ones that have body horror elements and like groups of girls in a remote island location. This would be for you. It's rare that I give YA such high marks, but I read 2 YA things so far this month, and they both smashed it, like really, really good. So the next one I want to talk about is Her Tale of Shim Chong, which is a Korean translation. This is on my hunt for dark sapphic romance. This is the best sapphic historical romance I have ever read, illustrated or otherwise. So I'm really, really happy about it. I gave it 4.25 stars. This is following a girl who is a beggar because her mother died, her father is blind, so she is tasked with begging in their small like fishing village to make ends meet and find like food and clothes for her and her father. And one day she runs into a lady of a manor who was thrown overboard in her passage across the sea to be married to like this gross old man for the sake of her family and her family's station in society. And she rescues her from drowning, and their fates become intertwined. So the lady of the manor asks the beggar girl to become her like personal assistant and kind of like lady's maid slash friend in the manor. And then you're seeing how things work for the lady as well in the manor, because the people there do not want her there. And when her husband falls mysteriously ill, she's accused of being a fox spirit, which is very bad because the seas have been rough ever since the day she arrived. This is so good because it talks about the way when they do what society expects of them, being this pure, very demure wife and taking care of her husband, the lady of the manor is still punished. When the beggar girl acts chaste and like downtrodden yet hopeful and asked for money or wants to work for money, people still treat her poorly. So no matter how they act, if they act of their own wish and they do what they want, like dancing or running or standing up for themselves in situations or talking back when someone is talking down on them, or if they do what society wants and like shut up, be quiet, sit down, no matter what they choose, they are still going to be punished. So this made me so angry. Every man in this story sucked. Like every single one sucked. But they sucked in such a realistic way because you could totally see that happening historically. Like nothing they did was so crazy over the top. It's just like daily patriarchy of people at that time, because this is the historical, and it's like, it sucked for women. And if you were two women who liked each other and you're a different class, there's gonna be issues, because there's issues for you anyway, so that just makes more issues. So yeah, I totally cried at the end of this, and the reason it gets 4.25 and not higher is because I shouldn't have read them. Sometimes after series are done, there will be side stories which are in the same universe, but at a different time than usually the main story. They usually happen later, or they are previews before. And some of the side stories were so light and kind of fluffy that it tainted like kind of the perfect ending of the series for me. So I wish I could go back and not read those. Don't read those side stories. If you read it, just read like the actual series. Don't read any side series. Don't read any author notes. I'm a purist. I usually don't read side stories if I can help it, because it changes kind of the dynamics of the characters. Anyway, 4.25, it was really good, and this is definitely going on my best sapphic dark romances of the year list, probably at the end. All right, now let's talk about the other dark YA this month that I read that was so good. And actually, I didn't read it, I listened to it. This was an audiobook, Werewolves Don't Die by Anton Treuer, who is part of the Ojibwe tribe. He is not only a scholar, but also he narrates it, and also he knows everything that he's talking about. So the book was so immersive, and I learned so much about like Ojibwe culture and their traditions, and just the way that they do things, like hunting and living in the forest. At certain times, my husband and I were listening to this on the road trip. This was like the best. We both listened to this. It was so good. At certain times, I was like, should we be knowing this information? Like, should we be learning this? Because it talks about like certain things about hunting that I didn't know, certain things about like trapping and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, honestly, it's so cool. So anyway, this is following a young boy who stands up to his bully in school in defense of not only himself, but his friend. And that same night, that school bully's house / his parents' meth lab is burned to the ground, killing the two adults, and the boy escapes with burns. And he says he's going to track him down and get him back. His dad, who is really scared for his son's life, decides to take him north into Canada to the Ojibwe reservation and set him out on the trap lines with the grandfather. So this morphs from like the small town school bullying and prejudices to like the loving grandparents' home, and then they set out to the trap lines, which are the lines to trap animals that they set out in the wilderness around. And it was so beautiful. This is like coming of age, realizing about who you want to be as a person, but also more about your family and why they might have lived or done things certain ways. This was just stunning, and I cried big baby fat tears at the end. It was really good. So yeah, this was another YA hit. It was so amazing, and I highly recommend it. Now we're going to talk about my favorite book I've read so far this month. This is Smothermoss by Alisa Alering, and this is so good, and I also think a lot of people won't like it. So this to me was like if you take My Absolute Darling and Educated and you smash it up with A Prayer for Owen Meany. I know that's very obscure, but it follows two girls who are living in like right up against poverty in the woods of Appalachia in the 1980s. Their mom is often absent because she's always working. The dad is completely not in the picture at all. And the older one has to make ends meet by foraging in the forest or working to provide money for her family. And the younger one is obsessed with like nuclear fallout and Russian invasions. And she draws these really creepy tarot cards from her imagination, and she uses them to predict things that happen. And so as it's going, you are getting to know about these two girls when suddenly there is a brutal attack on two women who are camping on the Appalachian Trail nearby, only 20 miles from their house, and the murderer is on the loose. And this is so good. The audiobook is phenomenal. The narrator, her voice is so good. My mom's side of the family is from Appalachia in Pennsylvania, and it just made me feel so many like fond feelings to hear the accent. I thought it was done so well. And the writing is so visceral. It really reminded me almost of like Perfume by Patrick Suskind, where it's earthy and gritty, and it just, the scent of everything, you could feel it like in your throat, in your lungs, in your nose, like you can smell and experience what's happening. A lot of the writing is talking about the cycle of nature, because the girls are living so close to the forest and are so dependent on it that it plays a huge role. This is a coming of age tale. It's also about sisterhood, and it's about the things that you can't say. So this has a lot of sapphic longing in it. It also has a lot about generational trauma and also expectations and violence against women. There are also really dark magical realism elements built in, and it really reminded me of A Prayer for Owen Meany, where the younger sister believes that she has a mission, and that mission is to find the killer and or prevent a Russian invasion of their mountain. So she is really focused on this, and you know, as like an adult and as a reader, that the things she's doing are so dangerous and are so like born from her circumstances. It makes you worry for her. It makes you want to protect her. And then you want to protect the older sister in different ways. And this was going to be a 4.5 or a 4.75. And then the ending kind of just petered out at about 90%. The author really lost the momentum and lost the buildup, because one or two of the narrative arcs are completely wrapped up and done really well. And then the interpersonal arcs, the author just left vague. Okay? No wrapping up, no resolution, and it really made me so angry. So I love this, but the ending really did not come together. So that's why it's 4.25 instead of higher. Like, it lost a whole half a star just from the ending kind of going out with a whimper. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish that the ending could be just so much more, because the whole book was so perfect. Yeah, so anyway, I gave this 4.25. I really love it. I highly recommend the audio if you are interested. And yeah, those are all the books that I have DNF'd and read so far in July. And I am currently reading a whole bunch. Two of the ones I'm reading are these. Rouge, I'm buddy reading with Avi, and The Memory of Animals, I'm reading for July. Well, they're both for July, so yeah. And I will talk to you soon in another video. Lots of love. Bye!